its applications. Well, 46% of respondents, almost half, were not only breached, they were actually breached multiple times. Another 26%, just over a quarter, were breached at least once. So, a full 72% were breached at least once through the application layer, through their applications within the last 12 months. That's a shockingly high percentage. And, it's really, really not good numbers. So, why is this happening? Why is this application security threat vector, a problem? Well, there's a lot more attack vectors against applications, and these are being exploited. We asked which of the following contributed to the successful security breach that exploited a vulnerability in one of your organization's applications in the last 12 months. The results are quite interesting. Traditionally, the biggest attack vector is vulnerabilities in applications. So these are things like the OWASP top 10, the traditional vulnerabilities like injection attacks, cross-site scripting, broken authentication, things like that. You can see that these are still there, they're still important, that they're number 2, WAF, web app zero-day vulnerabilities. But we look at newer attack vectors, bot attacks are now at the top, 44%. Software supply chain attacks, which we're hearing about in the news, things like the MageCart attacks, Kaesa, SolarWinds, they're now at third, 39% of breaches. A lack of API security, that's now involved in 31% of breaches. And of course, employee error is still there, it's accounting for 28% of the breaches. And then lastly, account takeovers at a similar amount, 28%. So while just a short time ago, most of the breaches came through the exploitation of the traditional vulnerabilities, the OWASP top 10, now you have a variety of new attack vectors. And this is probably at least in part due to the changes that have taken place as a result of the pandemic, working from home. So a wide range of application security risks are causing concern, with the variety of bot-based attacks being a particular worry. It's no secret that bots have become a growing problem for organizations over the past few years. And this is reinforced by the fact that bot-based attacks make up 2 of the top 3 application security risks most commonly cited by our decision makers as part of their top 3 risks. This is closely followed by API attacks and supply chain attacks. Organizations, they mustn't lose focus on the importance of application security. One of these risks could easily exploit a vulnerability, and it could be very hard to recover from the ramifications. This is illustrated by the number of respondents choosing web application vulnerabilities and zero-day attacks, is one of the top risks that they face. Attackers often chain multiple vulnerabilities together. For example, a supply chain attack and an API compromise can be put together. And this is seen as in the case of the Knox player compromise a few months back. So let's start by talking about bot attacks. At the start of the year, we predicted that bot attacks would grow smarter and become a bigger part of mainstream awareness. And this survey confirms that, and to be honest, then some. The wide array of bot attacks that target applications makes it a struggle for defenders to block them. With so much variety in this attack vector, it's no surprise that so many organizations are struggling to defend applications against bots. We asked our respondents, which of the following types of bot attacks targeted your organization's application, and do you find it difficult to defend against? While bot spam is more of a nuisance attack, it's often used as a smokescreen to hide something more malicious. So it must be dealt with and not ignored. Depending on its frequency and authenticity, bot spam can become really tricky to defend against and can evolve from something in, a benign annoyance into operational problems quite easily. I mean, we have an example in the UK where a bot attack was used to effectively cause a big smoke screen, had everybody running around, and while that was going on, the attackers then used a traditional SQL injection attack in order to breach the customer's database. And obviously that that had big ramifications in terms of data breach legislation and the fines that came out of that. Bot spoofing browsers and apps are also major problems. These spoofs range from simple to complex, from a user trying to hide their real browser to bots running compromised versions of an app in click farms, for example, to use for ad fraud and other malicious purposes. Any of these bots used in conjunction with one another increases their chances of being successful. So the multi-vector, low and slow bot attacks are at the core of the problem and most likely to contribute to successful breaches in the past 12 months. There are some interesting regional variances as well. So the APAC region is the most worried about DDoS attacks, and that far exceeds other regions. That's perhaps because DDoS or anti-DDoS infrastructure is not as advanced in the APAC region. Browser spoofing was top of mind for the United States, the Americas, and software spoofing came out as also highest in APAC, while in Europe the biggest concern was sneaker bots. So these are bots that do merchandise scalping. So for example, if you have a ticket website and the tickets go on sale for the latest concert, bots come along and buy all the tickets at machine speed before any customers can actually purchase the tickets for themselves. And of course, those tickets then go up for sale on the secondary market, eBay, places like that, at inflated prices, which is where the genuine customers now have to go to buy them. So the range of bot attacks that can exploit applications is a real problem. 3/4 of decision makers confirm that the range of bot attacks are causing genuine difficulties in their organizations when it comes to protecting applications. It appears organizations simply can't keep up. With an entire bot economy existing online, complete with marketplaces, brokers to ensure that bot users themselves don't get scammed. This problem's only continuing to get worse. I mean, you've got a situation now where the makers of bots, they produce bot frameworks that they have customers that come along and use them. So they have support, customer services for the user of the bot. There's a whole ecosystem and market out there. The automated attacks are covering such a wide variety of vectors and intelligence on the tooling side. It's become a massive global issue. Organizations will need external help from expert vendors for applications and bot security to put up an effective resistance against these bots, when they target their applications. Without proper defenses, they will inevitably get breached, and in some cases breached again and again, as we saw in the earlier statistics. In our data, respondents from organizations that were breached more than once were most likely to agree with this statement, suggesting that bots are the likely cause of their multiple breaches. So moving over to API security, most apps are now built API first. Building them in this manner helps speed up development. It speeds up releases. It moves everything along much faster. You also get newer forms of applications, like single page applications that are built to work either in mobile browsers or simulate mobile apps without the need to actually install an application. The one major thing that's happening with this type of app is that the actual application is directly exposed to the user because the API is available. If we take a step back and look at how web applications versus API-based applications work, with a web application, you had the browser that was intermediary. It kind of sits in the middle between the user and the server. So all the business logic, is hidden in the application, and most of the attacks against that business logic are well known. With an API-based application, the business logic's directly within the application. That means that the sanitization of input happens within the application, not in the server. So that means that you can bypass the application and access the API directly. When someone intercepts the API traffic, they can identify the backend servers, they can then figure out the logic, and then they can start to perform, various checks, identifying holes within the security and attack the system. And these are not well-known issues and problems. That makes APIs more dangerous, and the fact that they provide access to a lot of sensitive information directly, increases the risks around that. If your banking app, uses an API, it's got access to, your social security, your national identity number, date of birth, financial information. An improperly protected API will allow attackers to pull these numbers and this information out in bulk. So public-facing APIs are, become very commonplace, and it makes it imperative that they are properly secured. Quite a large percentage of the surveyed organizations deploy public-facing APIs for their customers, what we refer to as B2C or business to customer. At the same time, they're also using public APIs with their partners, B2B or business to business. And this speaks to the fact that most organizations are moving to an API-first development philosophy. APIs make development of newer versions of applications much faster, and they extend the usability of these applications, but they also create large new attack surfaces for the cyber criminals to leverage. Flawed API security continues to be a big contributor to significant data breaches. In the past 2 years, organizations must ensure they cover all the bases when they protect their APIs. We found that security concerns are top of mind when it comes to API. It should come as little surprise that decision makers across all regions placed security concerns at the top of the list of challenges that their organizations struggle with when they deploy APIs. An API-based application is significantly more exposed than traditional web-based applications. And that's due to the way it's deployed with direct access to the sensitive data of the application. Undoubtedly, the gaps in knowledge cited around where APIs are deployed and used, as well as API standards, we will be contributing to all of these concerns. It's interesting to see that various options here have been very closely mirrored by Gartner's report on API maturity in 2018. Security clearly is top of mind for the defenders of APIs. Organizations have put in place a number of solutions to secure their APIs, both inbound and outbound, so that's north-south traffic, and into API traffic, east-west traffic. But a majority feel that significant improvements are still required. On average, organizations are using more than one tool to secure their API. However, clearly this hasn't done much to ease the concerns around API security, and it indicates that the current solutions in place for securing all forms of traffic either aren't working to a desired level or aren't integrating well together to secure APIs from all angles. API security is still very much an area that is growing. And many of the solutions that are being used to protect APIs may not provide enough security. For instance, network firewalls cannot enforce more than basic signature security. API-based rate limiting or API-based access controls for the, IP-based access controls for the API. They cannot enforce positive security for the API. You cannot import an API specification to automatically configure the controls to protect that API. API gateways, on the other hand, they perform very well in the management and traffic management of an API, but many do not offer a complete API security solution. As part of the tool set within the API gateway. It's interesting to see organizations evolving, multi-layered protections for APIs, and there's clearly room for improvement. So supply chain attacks. The use of third-party scripts for web applications is very widespread. They're using a variety of methods to deliver these scripts within web browsers. The drive for efficiency when it comes to application development is very evident. With more than half of organizations on average using ready-made third-party scripts for their web applications. Security should be a big concern when using third-party code. This is especially true when code is being delivered to a browser directly from the source platform, such as GitHub or Google. If the code has been tampered with, that's a software supply chain attack. And this is how things like mage cart attacks happen. We had a big example here in the UK, British Airways. They had a mage cart card skimming attack. A third-party script within MageCart was compromised, and when the customer of British Airways was filling in the checkout form with their credit card payment details to buy their airline tickets, as well as those details being sent back to British Airways servers, they were also being echoed to an external server controlled by a hacker who was able to therefore gather the credentials from the customers buying tickets over the period of time. That resulted in a large GDPR compliance data breach fine against British Airways. It was originally expected to be £183 million. Some could argue they got off lightly when they were only fined £20 million. It was reduced because the airline industry has been hit so hard by the pandemic. They still got, hit with a £20 million fine in a period where they were not making any money because there was no airline flights. Obviously, organizations should be very, very wary of, this approach. Regardless of the technologies in place, to protect against software supply chain attacks, respondents are, they're keenly aware that their organizations need to improve in this area. Software supply chain attacks have become increasingly mature, with some scripts even able to avoid executing malicious code. If they detect there's a vulnerability scanner running, they turn themselves off, so they can't be detected by the vulnerability scanner. That makes them extremely difficult to defend against. This adds another layer of complexity, to the evolving threat landscape that we live in. Although organizations are deploying a range of technologies to protect themselves, it appears that this attack vector, much like bot attacks, is always one step ahead. And with recent high-profile breaches in mind, most regions understand that considerable improvements are needed when it comes to software supply chain attacks. So what's the solution to all these application security problems? Well, we've built on Barracuda's 15+ years of application security experience. And in May, we introduced Barracuda Cloud Application Protection Platform version 2, or CAP2 for short. We built Cloud Application Protection Platform to protect against the new classes of threats that have become prevalent. With CAP2, we have extended and enhanced this protection to cover all these threat vectors. Let's take a look at the components of the platform. In the middle is the application we're protecting. The platform contains WAF or WAF as a service, as well as bots, API and DDoS protection, along with identity and access control. With CAP2, we've added client-side protection and active threat intelligence. The solution provides powerful protection. We have added client-side protection, which protects against the supply chain attacks. Remember, these are the ones that account for 39% of the breaches. We have revamped our threat intelligence capabilities. We've combined vulnerability scanning and remediation, advanced threat protection, and our cloud machine learning layer into what we now call active threat intelligence, ATI. It powers our advanced bot protection capabilities, protecting against malicious bots. Remember that is 44% of those breaches we saw at the beginning. While we're making our solution more powerful, we're also making it easier to use. The new auto configuration engine runs machine learning models on the live traffic and provides configuration recommendations to improve the security policies. We've also introduced a new Terraform provider capability and new configuration templates, which adds more automation, which also helps with the ease of deployment and ease of use. We can already run our solution as a service. As I said, WAF's a service. It's hosted in the cloud. We're now adding the option for containerized deployment, where containerized WAFs can be deployed alongside application containers, what we call sidecar deployment. So if we have a look at Barracuda Web Application Firewall, as we said, over 15 years in development. It's a comprehensive application security product. It protects against the OWASP top 10 attacks, but there's a lot more than just the OWASP top 10. I mean, OWASP themselves track over 65 different categories of attacks, so it covers a lot more. OWASP top 10 seems to always get the focus because it is referenced and mandated in some standards like PCI DSS, for example, references the OWASP top 10 and also the SANS 25. As well as protecting against those sort of traditional attack vectors, we also have XML and JSON firewall. So that's protecting RESTful APIs, SOAP, WSDL applications, includes application DDoS protection and bot protection. For proactive defense, there's geo-IP control and reputation lists. It's a feature I love. Reduce your attack surface. Again, to use a customer that I have here in the UK, they are a bakery. They make bread. It's only sold within the UK market. They have a trade ordering website that the shops go to order the bread for the next day. That website only needs to be accessed from their customers in the UK. So why allow the whole world to access it? By geo-fencing that application, so only IP addresses in the UK can access it, we have immediately reduced the level of threats and attacks on their website. We reduced it by over 85%. It's just one simple security control put in place. Very, very powerful. Data loss. So WAFs don't just look at what is coming in, it also looks at the responses, what's going out. So we can make sure that we're not leaking information like credit card data, social security numbers. We can also build custom policies, so they can look for things like meta marking within documents. This document's internal only, company confidential. Can find those markings and prevent those documents accidentally leaking to the outside world through a website or a web application. As a product, it's available as a traditional hardware appliance. It's available as a virtual appliance on many hypervisor platforms. It's also available cloud gen for public cloud, AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud Platform. In addition, we also have the integration with the automated vulnerability identification and remediation service. So one of the tools that we have, Barracuda have a vulnerability manager, and you can use this to scan your applications. It's a complimentary free tool. You can use this to find out if you have any vulnerabilities or issues, that you need to be aware of. Knowing that you've got a problem is the first step in your defense. If you know you have a problem, you can then look at what you have to do to protect and defend against the vulnerabilities within your applications. I should stress that the report that this produces is sent to you. We don't have access to this report, and obviously the contents of that report you need to be very careful with, because it's the key to hacking your web application. Now, Barracuda also have a WAF as a service. Now this is built on our same proven technology. So our WAF as a service uses our WAF and the security engine that we've been developing for over 15 years. What we've done is we've simplified it. There is now a 5-step wizard, so you can set up an ad protection literally in 5 minutes. There's an intuitive infrastructure for how to fine-tune policies. Like the WAF, it has a fully featured REST API, so you can automate the deployment. It also includes unmetered DDoS protection. It's one of the advantages of it being a cloud service. So that means that you're moving the point of DDoS out into the cloud, away from the edge of your network. And again, it integrates with our automated vulnerability identification and remediation service. I mean, where that really comes into its own, if you have done a scan with the BVM tool, and you decide to use a Barracuda WAF or WAF as a service to protect and mitigate those vulnerabilities while you get them fixed within the code, for example, it buys the development team time to fix those vulnerabilities as part of their normal development lifecycle. But at the same time, you now know that you're protected while that's going on. What the report does is it actually feeds back into the WAF, and it's used to configure the WAF automatically to protect those vulnerabilities, which makes the administrator's life much, much simpler. You can just say, protect that vulnerability, instead of having to figure out what policy needs to be changed in order to do that. It becomes, a one-click step. A WAF as a service, we built on Microsoft Azure. So that gives us a global scale, data centers available right across the world. And of course, Microsoft are investing a huge amount of resources in extending that network. As you can see, there's a large number of announced regions, particularly within Eastern and Central Europe at the moment, and spreading out across the Middle East. Now, because we are built in Azure, that also means that we're leveraging Microsoft's backbone network, which gives tremendous advantages in terms of traffic management, traffic delivery, traffic latency, because as well as this large number of available regions, they also have a large deployment of points of presence for their edge network. This, of course, means that Barracuda WAF as a service can be deployed from the marketplace, but we have available a test drive. This test drive allows you to deploy an isolated lab environment where you can try Barracuda WAF as a service with a deliberately insecure web server and a deliberately insecure API. There's a full lab guide where you can run through scenarios working with those insecure products and using WAF as a service to protect those. If you do the full lab, it's about 3 hours, but it's an absolutely great way to learn, and it's completely free service that you can use. Of course, there's also the 30-day trial that you can use with WAF as a service as well. So Cat2 protects against all threat vectors, secures your online data, analytics and inventory against advanced bots, protect websites, mobile applications and APIs from the growing threat of advanced bots that can scrape your data, lock up your inventory, skew your web analytics, and bring basically chaos to your digital business. We can detect and block hidden, almost human bot traffic with the machine learning. Our cloud-based active threat intelligence layer uses crowdsourced data and battle-tested machine learning models to identify and block those sneaky, low and slow attacks that are being attempted by advanced bots. Can improve the user experience and security, minimize the risk of data breaches, reputational damage, financial disasters without captures, without using captures. And of course, the disadvantage of captures is they slow down and interrupt, your customer's user experience. The powerful, innovative application security and bot mitigation solutions, they're really simple to deploy, configure, and manage. With client-side protection, again, easy to set up and protect against supply chain attacks. What we're leveraging here is the in-browser security policies, content security policies, and sub-resource integrity. So these are extensions to the HTTP protocol, where we can specify security policies in the headers. What the page, when the code is running in the page, what it's allowed to do. Where can it contact? Where is it allowed to load other resources from? With sub-resource integrity, we can define hashes for those resources that the browser recognizes. So if it loads or receives a resource that has a different hash, it knows it has been modified and won't run it. So that way, if somebody has compromised the code that was originally available, the browser actually knows that has taken place. And of course, part of that is also giving the browser the ability to report these violations back. So with our cloud layer, that is possible. And of course, that gives us visibility into the patterns and changes that are going on within the system, so that we can, alert, that something has changed, or, something has been compromised, or that there are attempts to do this, because of course, the whole point of these security policies is to prevent those actual attacks from happening. Of course, on the API side, we're securing APIs against application attacks. We're protecting web and mobile application APIs from a growing threat of attacks and data breaches that cause more havoc than traditional web applications. They cause more havoc because they happen at machine speed. A bot can attack an API and extract huge amounts of data far faster because it's an API. We can use API discovery to enforce positive security. We can import API definitions, schema definitions, such as the OpenAPI Swagger formats, the Google Discovery formats, and of course XML schemas, XML, WSDL, web security description languages, and use these to define positive security rules, strict rules, in order to block any attacks, probing vulnerabilities within the API. If it's outside the schema and definition, then it's just not going to be allowed to happen. This means that we can actually improve the performance of APIs, because we can enforce rate limits, which means that we can enforce service level agreements. The application security solutions provide ability to do content routing, caching, and compression to speed up. This helps with chatty APIs. And we can also take HTTP-based APIs and secure those, offloading the security onto the web application firewall. And of course, for the rate limits, we can slow down violators of rate limits using capabilities like tar pitting, which slows them down to a human speed, which prevents them from wreaking the havoc that we were talking about. So with CAP 2, we have tools to protect against, the risks and threats that we've been talking about. But what's the actual impact of ignoring them, if we don't do something to protect against them? Well, if we go back to the research we did with Vance and Bourne, we asked our decision makers what were the main impacts of a successful security breach that exploited a vulnerability in one of your organization's applications in the last 12 months. Well, as you can see, the biggest impact was downtime and data loss. The secondary impacts like brand and reputational damage, sort of financial and legal penalties feed into things like the loss of customers, staff morale, and worst of all, even loss of jobs. The average cost of a data breach is approximately $4 million. And those kinds of sums, they can take small and medium businesses to failure. They can't, fines and costs of those natures, can cause such a huge impact. It will cause the business to fail. So what are the respondents' plans to protect themselves? Well, we asked them, which of the following solutions will your organization be deploying in the next year? Straight away, we can see that they're looking for bot protection, API protection, and supply chain attack protection. It's 1, 2, 3 in that list. Supply chain protection even appears twice. In the form of scanner and standalone services. So scanner at number 3 and standalone services at number 6. So, to explain the difference there, software composition analysis and client-side protections sort of provided by the content security policies and sub-resource integrity, which are looking basically for the changes in software code from 2 different perspectives. And effectively, that's taking a defense in depth approach, which of course is always a good idea, considered to be best practice. If we carry on down the list, the Cloud Application Protection Platform provides protections and integrations for each of them. We have rich logging and reporting that will feed into a SIEM. We've got vulnerability scanner, active DDoS service, WAF on-prem, in public cloud, and even software as a service solution. For baseline protections against sort of the old school OWASP top 10 attacks. And then, of course, we've got identity access solutions like single sign-on, also available as part of the IAM module within the WAF solution. So it's clear that the Cloud Application Protection Platform has something for everyone, who are looking to protect their applications. So what next? Well, I have some calls to action for you. Please look out for the follow-up email from Softprom. It will have more information on today's webinar, such as where you can get your own copy of the State of Application Security in 2021 report. So you can read the full report, not just the highlights I've shown you today. There's a link where you can make free use of the Barracuda Vulnerability Manager. Softprom will have that for you. And a link to a no risk free trial of the WAF as a service in the Azure test drive. So you can find that for yourself very easily. If you only have time to do one thing, please make sure you use the vulnerability manager. Make sure you know if you have web applications that are vulnerable. If you don't know, then you can't protect your organization's data and reputation. So it's the place to start. I mean, head in the sand is not a valid security strategy. If you don't know that, obviously you wouldn't be here today. So that brings me over to questions.
Thank you. Коллеги, если у вас есть вопросы, пожалуйста, вы можете поднять руку, я вам включу микрофон, если вам будет так удобнее, или вы можете написать в чат или в блок вопросы и ответы. Выбирайте удобный для вас язык, вы можете написать на русском, мы транслируем эту информацию на английский с кодом. Прислать ваши вопросы.